Welcome to a new episode of our NMS Prime version 4.0 web series. So far, you saw us installing the base system, installing NMS Prime, configuring the system, and then provisioning and monitoring both DOCSIS and TR69 devices. Today, I want to show you a little bit more about using our API. Here you can see our webpage on nmsprime.com. If you type /API, you will find a Swagger interface or open API documentation about all the endpoints we provide. For example, what we are going to show today and look at a little bit closer is both the contract and the modem page. So if you scroll down a little bit, you can see here all the HTTP methods which are available. Our API is based on REST-JSON, so you can very well, as most of the APIs these days do, you can just use it using REST-JSON. So in the beginning, we, for example, have an example here where you can get all the contracts if you want to, and here you can see all the fields with, it's basically you get a success flag if getting the contract worked well or didn't, and then you get all the models. As you can see, they are referenced by ID. So you have model, then the key is the ID of the contract, and then you have all the contents of the contract, and then the next contract again by ID, and then all the fields. Of course, this way it's just getting all the contracts, but of course you can also maybe create one. It's the same fields basically, and you can also see the types we require. Some of them are integers, some are strings, some are booleans, some are date fields, for example. So you can, of course, try it out yourself. Then we can get a single contract by its ID. We can update using the patch method. And last but not least, of course, we can also delete this. And basically any object we have in our database, you can control and access via our API. We also have a validator. So in case you are inputting wrong data or maybe you're missing some data, our validator will check this and you will get a JSON response back, in this case success false, and it will tell you basically what you did wrong or what's missing. Besides this, we also have on our wiki, so if you click on Doku, you get to our wiki, and then you can just search for API. Here we have the NMS Prime API, and we will go, you get a brief explanation how all of this works together. It's REST-JSON, obviously, and then you get some examples both on curl and on Python. So we will, of course, you can do this with PHP. You can do this basically with any language which is able to do HTTP requests and decode and encode JSON objects. And of course, also do basic authentication, which basically every operating or programming language these days can do. But in this case, I just wanted to show you that we are doing this both with curl, with Python, and I can also show you that it's at least the GET requests you can do via the browser. So I have an instance here running, basically just directly after installation. And the first thing you need to have to talk with the API is you have to have certain capabilities or abilities. So I'm here as super user initial, so I'm basically an admin user. As you can see on the user settings, my assigned role is, among others, admin. And if we look into our user roles, you can see that the admin user role basically can do anything. So you can see here all abilities allowed. So basically I can do anything. Normally what would happen, for example, in, let's say I'm a guest or something like this, when I can't do anything, then I can say allow to use the API. And if I were to save, all the users having this role would not then be able to use the API. And besides this, if I go to my user settings, you see this is my email address, and this is the username I have to use for the API. So that's the username for the API, and the password just as you typed in here. Okay, so we can start now. So let's say I'm going to open up just a random shell here, and I'm going to the API. And maybe I'll want to get all the QoSs available. Or let's say I want to get all the contracts, for example. So I can just copy paste. I can use curl, obviously. So let's do this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use localhost because I'm basically tunneling this through SSH, but this doesn't really matter. I mean, normally you would just type in your IP address here on port 8080. And of course here, as I said, my username would be root at localhost. So I'm using basic authentication, and I can use or tell basically curl to use basic authentication by the -u, as you can see. And then first I'm going to type my username and then my secret or my password is Tor. And now I'm going to look at all the contracts. And now obviously it tells me, okay, I'm using a self-signed certificate. And I think with -k, you can say I ignore basically that the opposite certificate is not secure or is not validated properly. So I can say ignore this. And as you can see now here, I'm getting back some JSON data. And just as we saw in our API Swagger documentation, if we go back to the contracts down below here, you saw basically I'm getting all, all the contracts. So not creating, but getting all contracts. And we get a success flag, which is down here, as you can see. And we get models, and they are referenced by ID. So this is the first contract, as you can see. And there might be another one. For example, I don't see it right now here, but we should use some other means to properly decode this. Because this, of course, is a big JSON object, which is not that easy to read. Besides this, so I'm getting all the contracts, but I know there's at least one contract with this ID. So what I can just do as well is I can reference it by its ID. And now I'll only get basically this one contract. So you can see getting is not a problem. We can do this with curl. We have basic authentication using a username and password. And we ignore the SSL certificates in this case because it's self-signed. And the same basically I can also do with my browser. So I can, for example, go to my contracts. And here you can see I have two. One is the 500,000, as you can see here. And the next one is a contract with an ID 3. Fair enough. And so instead of getting the contract with a GUI, I can also just say I'll open this up in a new tab, and I'll just append API in front of the contract, I believe. Let me check. Yeah, directly after admin, I add API and then the version 0. And now you will see that the browser is asking me for username and password. Again, this is basic authentication. So I'm going to use my username, as you can see here, and I'm going to use the password over here. And now you can see get is just as well possible with the browser. So I can get my raw data. As you can see, it's basically just what we saw here. And I can, of course, format it in a certain way. Now I can see it better, or I can even let Firefox decode this, and now you can collapse and expand as you wish, and basically look at all the potential fields or possible fields which are available. Besides this, we also have /create endpoint, and this will basically tell you all the fields, and it will also give you a description what this field means. For example, we have one field called number, make it a little bit bigger, of the form time text, and it's the contract number basically. Or we have number 2, which is yet another contract number. And actually we have multiple contract numbers here because for legacy systems and so on, you see this. Besides this, we have company, salutation, academic degree, first name, and so on and so forth. So you can go through, for example, here the related phone numbers. These are the assigned phone numbers of the customer, and so on and so forth. Or a certain flag. Does the contract has telephony, and then you get a help text basically. So this will help you to just see what kind of type a certain field has, and you can also get some info about the fields. And as I said, you can basically do this wherever you want or wherever you are. So I can just as well get all the contracts as we saw before. So I get contract 3 and 500,000. I can also reference it by the ID again, just like we did with curl. And now I'm getting only this one model, basically. And of course, I can also jump somewhere else. I can say, okay, maybe I want to see if, I don't know if we have QS right there. For example, here we have one QS. So again, I'll just go to API-v0. And here I get the QS values, this one model, obviously, and I can see all the fields. And again, I can go to create and let the system explain what all the fields are used for. So that's just getting so far. The next, of course, interesting thing would be creating, reading, updating, deleting certain objects and see this being reflected on the web GUI. This is what we're going to do next. So for this, we have some more examples. So if we go back to Confluence, you can see here, this was just getting. Here, now we can use Python just as well. You see there's a lot of gets, so we're not really that much interested in. Maybe interestingly, you can also search by certain fields. For example, here in the modem, we can say, show me all the modems of a certain contract. Let me make it a little bit bigger for you. Or you can even use logical ends between certain parameters and say it must be of a certain contract, and it also must have a certain MAC address. And I only want to get modems which fit this approach or this filter, basically. So we can do the same, for example, in the contract case. We saw we have two contracts. We have one with a first name of Max. So if I just say I want all the contracts, I'll get both, as we saw before. Like here, I get model 3 and model 5000. And now I say I only want contracts having a first name of Max. So I can make a question mark for parameters. And let's say I do first name equals Max. And now you can see I only get this very one model which fits this description. Of course, I could also say, okay, I want also a last name of maybe Power, which in this case doesn't exist. I mean, this is Max Mooman, so Power should not result in anything. And you can see I get it's successful, obviously, because there was no error, but I don't get any models. Okay, so much for the getting. Besides this, we have changing, creating, modifying, deleting database objects. And here you can see that I'm using, in this case, Python, because it's quite simple to work with. I have to import certain modules. I have to import the request model because this allows me to do or to specify this basic authentication only once, and then I can just reuse it for the upcoming requests. And here you can see, instead of getting, like we saw here, the get response, here I can also do patch and post and delete. And this is what you can see here. So I do a post, for example, here I do a patch, and I also do a delete. And we can try this now. So I'll just going to copy the script here from Confluence. I'll of course adjust the username, the password, and potentially, in this case I don't need to, but potentially would also have to change the hostname. And then I'll get back to you and we can play around and see if this is being reflected on the web GUI. All right, now having this copied over into my text editor, you can see here I adjusted it a little bit. I'm going to go through basically creating, reading, updating, deleting of a certain contract. And we can do the same for the modem later as well. This is just an example. I'm going to do this in Python interactive mode now, so we can go step by step and see what's going to happen. So first I'm going to start Python, and I have to import the JSON module to decode the JSON objects I get back from the API. And I'm also going to import requests, which allows me to specify the basic authentication credentials with every request I do. And now I'm going to open up a session, and I attach my credentials to the session. And now I will basically just want to get all the fields and how they should be set for the contract. Just what we did already with the browser, I can now try to do with Python as well. So I'll do this, and now I'm getting a warning. It tells me the certificate verify failed. So again, we're using the self-signed certificate. So what I need to add here is basically verify false here. And if I do this again, so let me just clean this up a little bit. And now it's telling me, it's saying, okay, well, you ignored the certificate. If this is not, recommended, but you can do it anyway. Of course, the correct solution would be to assign proper certificates to your machine. And of course, this is typically what we do directly after installation with a customer, but this is just a test session. So bear with me. So we say, okay, we don't verify this. And now theoretically, I should be able to get the text. So basically what the system told me or what I got back from the system. And here it says, okay, I'm unauthenticated. So the success is false. So something was wrong. And the system tells me what's wrong. So I have to go back to my system and see what's going on. The password is correct, but I was typing in the wrong user. So here I was using API add. I should use root add. So I can update my credentials. Let's do it like this. And now I'm trying to get the same again. And now you will see if I do r.text, okay, I get all my JSON objects. So this is to be expected. This is basically what we already got with the browser and with curl. What we're going to do now is I'm going to create a contract. And first off, I'm going to miss something, namely the salutation. So I deliberately make a request which is not correct or which is missing some fields. And if I do this and I'm looking at the text, it tells me, okay, the salutation is required. I did not specify it, so I should add it. So let's go in here and say, okay, I'm going to add the field salutation. And let's put it like in German with Herr for Mr. And now let's see what's happening. Our text, basically the return. And now it's telling me, yes, the success is true, as you can see here. And it will also tell me what the ID of the contract is now. The old contract was 3, now the new contract is 4. And it also gives me some warning. Here the warning is that we are trying to geolocate automatically contracts based on their addresses. And this typically works. In this case, I did not set up OpenStreetMap. So basically, if you want to resolve an address to a geocoordinate with OpenStreetMap, you need to set up your email address for abuse purposes, in case you're abusing the API, that they can tell you. So I could actually go here and say I go to NMS prime env global env, and I will set up my OSM email to info@nmsprime.com, and based on this I will go and update the cache, php artisan optimize, or if actually config cache is sufficient here, and from now on I should not get this anymore, but we'll see. So this is just basically to say the success is true. I can also decode this now. So let's go ahead and say I want the return should be decoded, the JSON object. And now I can do, for example, return success. Maybe I'm only interested in this field. So I can do return and then success, and I get true. So this was working well. And if I want to get the ID, I do return ID and get directly the ID of the contract. And we should see this now in our contract page. So if I refresh this, you will now see there is one contract, which I was called missing salutation, and but of course later on I changed it, so this looks fine. And you will see that the contract ID up here is 4, so that's fine. So what can I do now? Well, for example, I could say I want to modify something. So let's say I already loaded this, so I've decoded the feedback from the system, and now I want to patch the contract. And you saw we have already the return ID, and this is, of course, the ID I need in order to patch the contract later on. So now I'm going to put this in here, and now instead of doing a post for creating a new contract, like we saw here in our API, I was doing get, actually here get, then I created one with post, and now I want to update an existing contract by patching it. And this is what you see here, session patch, then the contract. Here I'm typing in, basically putting in 4 from here, such that the system knows what kind of or which contract I want to modify. And now let's say I'm changing the first name to Max or Maxine maybe, and the last name would be again Mustermann, for example. So I can do something like this, or maybe Musterfrau, whatever it is. And now hopefully this will work. Let's have a look. I can do rtext again. It tells me success, so that worked, and it also tells me just once more again the ID. And now you should see that before it was missing salutation, and now it is Maxine Mustafa. So that works pretty well. So let's go back to all our contracts. So we saw adding one, looking at one. So of course we can always look at one by simply doing get again. So I'll do our get, and now I reference again contract number 4, and I type it in, and now I do rtext, not ttext but rtext, and now I can see the whole model, and you will see Maxine and Mustafa. So that works as well. So that's nice. The next thing, of course, I can do is deleting a contract. So let's do this. So this is basically down here. Now instead of calling get or patch or post, I will now do delete. And of course here the contract will be 4. And I type enter. I get the text. And success, deleted contract 4, success true. So let's have a look. And as you can see, it's gone, just as we would expect. So that's so much for the contract. The next thing we can also have a look at is that we can do the same basically with the modem. Again, this is not too interesting, but we can do it anyway. I can get all the fields of the contract or get text with explanation. Then we can do add a new modem. And of course, if you want to add a modem, you always need the contract ID. Since I deleted the contract now, I will use one of the existing ones. So for example, I can use, let's say this one, or maybe this might be a little bit more interesting. So let's take this one. And here we have a 500,000 ID. So of course I have to reference this in my code, and actually I already did. And of course I also need to make sure that the config file ID and the QoS ID exists. So let's first have a look. Do we have such a QoS? So let's look at QoS. We have 1, and the ID is 1, so that works well. And if we look in our config files, we also have a base config file, but in this case the ID is also 1, so we should use here 1 as well. Like this. There will be a MAC address, obviously, so I'm just going to choose 1, and let's see if this will work. So let's post a modem. So basically now we are not in the contract anymore, but we can zoom or go down a little bit. And here now we're basically here posting one modem, which creates the modem. You can see all the fields, the potential fields which we have. I'm obviously not sending all of them, but only hopefully only the required ones. So let's have a look and see what it does. Our text, and now you can see it's not complaining about the OpenStreetMap anymore, but it seems OpenStreetMap was not able to resolve the IP address, so it fell back to Google, and also Google was not able to, or actually in this case, Google and HereMap, we didn't set the API keys up, so this is why it's complaining. But you still get success, true, and ID 2. And if we go now into our contract, you will see that now we have such the modem, which you can see here. So that's perfectly fine. You see it was not able to resolve the geolocation because we simply didn't add any house number, any postcode, no street. So obviously it's not able to resolve this. But you see the OpenStreetMap error is not there anymore. And now I can just try adding the same modem again. So let's go ahead and say I want another modem in the same contract with the same config file ID, with the same QoS ID, but also with the same MAC, as you can see. And this is a condition which is not allowed in our system, obviously, because you can't have many modems or the same modems with the same MAC address, but we can try anyway. So let's do it. And let's have a look at the message. And now the validator is telling us, okay, the MAC has already been taken, so the success will be false, and you don't get a new modem in here, obviously. Now we can basically patch the modem again. So let's say we are going to, well, first off, I need to set up the ID, or I can of course change it here. The ID was of the modem is 2, so I will have to set this to 2 here. So I'm going to patch the second modem, and before it was 55 in the end, and now I'm going to change this to 56. So let's do it. There's an invalid syntax. Just bear with me. Let's do it like this. Still an issue. I think I'm missing the comma here. So here we are, our text, and you can see success is true. Again, it was not able to resolve it, but it was able to patch it. And now if we refresh, you see now it's 5.6 right here. And last but not least, of course, we can delete the modem. You can see it's still here. Now if I go to session delete, and again, I'm referencing ID number 2, because this is my modem. And if you can see now, our text, now it tells me has been deleted. Of course, it also tells me it was trying to restart it in case it's online. It tells me it was not able to restart because this is just a test system. But anyway, the success is true, so I know it worked well. At least deleting the modem worked well. And now you can also see if I refresh that the modem is gone. And basically, this whole life cycle for all the different elements is available all via our REST JSON API. You can play around with it to your heart's content. Whatever you want to change, you can do. As you can see, you can also get all the responses down here, how they look like and what kind of types they have. So it's all here. And besides this, we also provide, so if we go back here and expand this, we also have an example how you can get basically the first modem online. So after you install the system, we have all the API requests you need. For example, setting up a config file and setting up a cost center and a QoS, a product, a config file, a contract, a modem, and so on and so forth, and CMTS, IP pools, and so on. And basically with this, if you run through all of this, you have a working system and you can provision modems. So that's all I wanted to show you today. Thanks for your attention and see you next time.